The notification lit up my phone at 2:47 in the morning, but sleep had already abandoned me hours ago. I lay there, staring at the darkness, wondering why Isabella, my fiancée, hadn't come home from her bachelorette party yet. It should have ended before midnight. When I finally grabbed my phone, I expected a tipsy message or some blurry group photo. Instead, what I saw made my blood run cold. There was Isabella, my fiancée of 8 years, perched on some stranger's lap at the tap house downtown. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, her face flushed with more than just alcohol. The man's face was turned partially away, but I could see enough. Designer shirt, arrogant smile, the type who assumed he owned every space he entered. The caption read, "Last night of freedom. Thanks, girls, for the wildest bachelorette ever. No regrets." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments. Her friends were celebrating, dropping fire emojis and enthusiastic messages. Her maid of honor, Chloe, had commented, "What happens at the bachelorette party stays at Oops." I stared at that photo for 10 full minutes while my mind raced. 8 years together, 8 years of building a shared life, making plans, discussing children and mortgages, and growing old together. And this was how she celebrated our upcoming marriage. Without overthinking it, I took a screenshot and posted it to my own Facebook profile with a simple caption, "First night of freedom, actually." Then I changed my relationship status to single and tagged everyone who mattered, including her father, Robert Hayes, the most rigid finance executive in all of Bellevue, Washington. Then I waited. The response came fast and furious. My phone exploded with notifications, comments, and messages. Friends, family, colleagues, everyone had an opinion. Some offered support, others expressed shock, but most were simply hungry for the drama. At 3:15 in the morning, I heard Isabella's car pull into the driveway. She burst through the front door like a storm, her face twisted with fury. Still wearing her little black dress from the party, her makeup smeared and running. "What is wrong with you, Davis?" she screamed, waving her phone at me. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I was sitting at our kitchen table, laptop open, watching the social media firestorm I'd ignited. Our small town of Bellevue thrived on gossip, and I just handed them the story of the decade. What's wrong with me? I stood up slowly. At 38, I'd learned to control my anger through years of service and running my own contracting business. But tonight, that control was hanging by the thinnest thread. I'm not the one grinding on strangers at my bachelorette party. It was just a joke. She threw her purse onto the counter. "You're so insecure." It was harmless fun. Harmless. I pulled up the photo on my laptop screen. "This looks harmless to you?" Isabella glanced at the image, and her face went pale for just a moment. Then the defiance came roaring back. "You don't trust me after 8 years? That says everything about you, not me. Who is he?" "Nobody. Just some random guy at the bar." Chloe dared me to take a photo. It meant nothing, but something in her voice told me she was lying. The way her eyes darted away, the slight tremor in her hands. I'd seen enough liars to recognize the signs. My phone rang. Robert Hayes' name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Isabella hissed. I put on speaker. "Hello, Robert. Davis Miller. What in God's name is going on? I'm getting calls from half the city about some social media nonsense. Ask your daughter." "Isabella, explain yourself this instant." She grabbed the phone. "Dad, it's nothing. Davis is having some kind of breakdown." "The photo was just a silly joke," I said. "A joke that's now been shared 300 times? The local newspaper just picked it up." Isabella's face went white. "What?" I refreshed my browser. Channel 5 News. Local groom cancels wedding after viral bachelorette party photo. "Congratulations, honey. You're famous." "This is insane," she shouted. "You're ruining everything over nothing." "I'm ruining everything." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not the one who decided to get cozy with a stranger 3 days before our wedding. Robert's voice crackled through the phone. "That's enough, both of you. Isabella, come home immediately. We'll discuss this like adults." After she left, I sat in my kitchen and watched the story explode across social media. High school friends were commenting, my army buddies were weighing in, even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable, had somehow found the post and left a string of shocked emojis. But as the adrenaline faded, A nagging feeling settled in my gut. Isabella's reaction had been too extreme, too defensive. And that man in the photo, there was something familiar about him, even with his face partially hidden. I was going to find out exactly who he was. The next morning brought an endless parade of phone calls, text messages, and unexpected visitors. Mrs. Gable knocked on my door at 7 with a casserole and an eager look in her eyes. "Such a shame, dear," she said, bustling into my kitchen uninvited. Though I have to say, I always wondered about that girl. Too ambitious, if you ask me. And those late nights at the office. Late nights? Oh yes, working until all hours. Though between you and me, I saw her car leave at 5:30 most days, then come back around 9 or 10. Strange way to work late, don't you think? I filed that information away and called my best friend, Leo, who managed the tap house downtown. If anyone knew the local gossip, it was Leo. "Dude, you broke the internet," he said when he answered. "Half the town's talking about it. The other half is sharing memes. I need a favor. Can you meet me for lunch? Already clearing my schedule." We met at the tap house during the slow afternoon shift. Leo poured me a beer and slid a basket of wings across the bar. "So what's the real story?" he asked. I showed him the photo again. "Look at this guy. Really look at him." Leo studied the screen, then his eyes widened. "Holy crap. Is that Ethan Vance?" "Who's Ethan Vance?" "Regional director at Hayes Financial Group. Robert's golden boy. Drives a Mercedes. Thinks he's every woman's dream." Leo paused. "Davis, if Isabella's messing around with Ethan Vance, this is bigger than just cheating. That guy's her boss's boss." The pieces started clicking into place. The late nights, the defensive reaction, the panic in her eyes when I posted that photo. This wasn't just about a drunken mistake at a bachelorette party. I need to know for sure. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time to do some investigating." Leo grinned. "Count me in. But first, you should know your little social media stunt cost Ethan some serious face. Word is Robert called him into the office this morning. The whole company's buzzing about it." That afternoon, I drove to Isabella's office building and parked across the street. At 5:30, just like Mrs. Gable had said, Isabella walked out to her car. But instead of driving home, she pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward downtown. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding. She drove to the Marina View condos, the expensive complex by the marina. I watched her park and walk into Building B, like she'd done it 100 times before. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a tall man in an expensive suit. Even from a distance, I recognized him from the photo. Ethan Vance. They got into his Mercedes and drove off together. I sat in my truck for an hour, processing what I just witnessed. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This was an affair. When I got home, I called my old Army buddy Marcus, who now ran a private security company in Portland. "I need help with something," I told him. "What kind of help?" "The kind you're good at. Research, surveillance, maybe some creative problem solving." Marcus chuckled. "Sounds like someone's in trouble. What's the situation?" I explained everything. The photo, the investigation, what I discovered about Ethan. "So you want to know how deep this goes?" "I want to know everything. How long it's been going on, what they're planning, all of it. Give me 48 hours. The next morning brought more surprises. Chloe, Isabella's maid of honor, showed up at my door looking nervous. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in, noting how she avoided eye contact. "Look, Davis, I feel terrible about all this. The photo thing got way out of hand. Did it? Or did it just expose what was already happening?" She fidgeted with her purse strap. "I don't know what you mean. Ethan Vance. How long has Isabella been seeing him?" Chloe's face crumpled. "I can't. I promised I wouldn't. Chloe, I saw them together yesterday. I know about the apartment. The only question is whether you're going to help me understand what's been going on, or whether you're going to keep lying for her." She started crying then, mascara running down her cheeks. 6 months, she whispered. "It started 6 months ago at the company retreat. She said it was just physical, that she loved you but needed something exciting. She made me promise not to tell anyone. And you thought that was okay? I thought it would burn out. I thought she'd get it out of her system and marry you anyway. But then she started talking about maybe calling off the wedding, and I panicked. I thought if she had one last wild night, she'd realize what she was giving up. So the bachelorette party was what? A test. She wanted to see if she could walk away from him. But when he showed up at the bar, Chloe shook her head. She lit up like a Christmas tree. That's when I knew she was in love with him. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just the cheating, but the elaborate deception, the months of planning our wedding while she was planning her exit strategy. There's more, Chloe said quietly. Ethan's been promising to leave his wife. He says once he gets the promotion to executive vice president, he'll have enough money to make a clean break. Isabella thinks they're going to run away together. His wife, Ethan's married, has been for 15 years. 2 kids in private school. And Isabella knows this. She thinks she's different, that he really loves her. After Chloe left, I sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planned my next move. For 8 years, I'd been the steady, reliable guy, the one who fixed things when they broke, who kept his mouth shut and his head down. But Isabella and Ethan had made one crucial mistake. They'd humiliated me publicly, thinking I'd just take it and fade away quietly. They were about to learn that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when pushed too far. Marcus called me at 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday with news. "Your girl's been busy," he said. "I've got hotel receipts, credit card statements, and enough text messages to write a novel. Want the highlights? Give me everything." They've been meeting twice a week for 6 months. Always the same hotel, the Waterfront Inn. Ethan pays cash, but Isabella's been using her credit card for dinners, gifts, even lingerie. She's not exactly covering her tracks. What about the texts? That's where it gets interesting. Ethan's been feeding her a line about getting promoted to executive VP, leaving his wife, the whole fairy tale. But I did some digging into his finances. The guy's leveraged to the hilt. Big mortgage, kids' school tuition, country club memberships. He's not leaving his wife anytime soon. Does Isabella know that? Based on these messages, she's planning to move in with him after your wedding gets officially called off. She's already been looking at apartments. The betrayal cut deeper with each new detail. While I've been planning our future, she'd been planning her escape. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. "Ethan's got a reputation at work. This isn't his first affair. Word is he's done this dance before. Promises to leave his wife, strings the woman along for months, then disappears when things get complicated. Send me everything you've got, already in your email. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve." That evening, I drove to the tap house to meet Leo. The bar was crowded with the usual Friday night crowd, but Leo had saved me a seat at the end where we could talk privately. "You look like hell," he said, sliding a beer across the bar. "Feel worse, but I got a plan." I filled him in on what Marcus had discovered. Leo's expression grew darker with each detail. "So what's the play?" "First, I'm going to have a conversation with Ethan. Man to man. You sure that's smart? A guy like that probably has lawyers on speed dial. I'm not going to threaten him. I'm just going to make sure he understands the situation." At 9 o'clock, I drove to the Marina View condos and waited. Sure enough, Ethan's Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. I watched him walk toward Building B, then got out of my truck. "Ethan Vance." He turned, squinting in the dim light. "Who's asking?" "Davis Miller. I think you know who I am." His face went pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "Look, if this is about that photo, it's about a lot more than the photo." I stepped closer, noting how he instinctively backed toward his car. For all his expensive clothes and smooth talk, Ethan was soft. He probably hadn't been in a real fight since high school. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You're going to end whatever this is with Isabella tonight, and you're going to stay away from her. You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can. See, I know about your wife, your kids, your mortgage payments. I know about the other women you've done this to. And I know that Robert Hayes values his company's reputation above everything else." Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "You're threatening me. I'm informing you. There's a difference. Isabella is an adult. She can make her own choices. You're right, she can. But so can I." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. A draft email to Robert Hayes with photos, hotel receipts, and text message screenshots attached. "One click sends this to your boss, your wife, and every gossip blog in Bellevue. Your choice." Ethan stared at the phone, then at me. "You're bluffing." I hit send. Oops. The color drained from his face. You son of a... He lunged at me. But 8 years of military training and 15 years of manual labor had left me in better shape than his gym membership could match. I sidestepped his clumsy swing and grabbed his wrist, twisting his arm behind his back. Here's some free advice, I said quietly. Next time you want to destroy someone's life, make sure they don't know how to fight back. I released him and walked back to my truck, leaving him standing in the parking lot, probably wondering how fast he could update his resume. My phone started ringing before I even got home. First Isabella, then Robert, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The next morning, I woke up to find my story had gone viral again. Someone had recorded video of my confrontation with Ethan and posted it online. The comments were brutal, and most of them were on my side. Local contractor school's cheating boss. This is how you handle a homewrecker. Ethan Vance got what he deserved. At 10, Isabella showed up at my house. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and desperate. You destroyed everything, she screamed the moment I opened the door. I destroyed everything? That's rich. Ethan lost his job. Dad fired him this morning. Good. How can you be so cruel? We love each other. I laughed. Love? Isabella, you were a game to him, just like the other women he's done this to. That's not true. Ask him about Rebecca Peterson or Sarah Garcia. Both former employees who thought they were special, too. Her face crumpled. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you heard from Ethan? Since yesterday? She pulled out her phone, and I could see her scrolling through messages. Her expression changed as she realized what I already knew. Ethan had gone silent. He's probably just figuring out what to do next, she said, but the confidence was gone from her voice. He's probably figuring out how to explain this to his wife without losing half his assets in a divorce. You don't understand what we have. I understand exactly what you have. 6 months of hotel rooms and lies. And now it's over. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant she realized I was right. Ethan wasn't coming to rescue her. He wasn't leaving his wife. He wasn't even returning her calls. I hate you, she whispered. That's fine. But you're going to hate yourself more when you realize what you threw away. After she left, I called Leo. How's it feel to be the most famous man in Bellevue? He asked. Like I'm just getting started? The next week brought consequences that rippled through our small town like stones thrown in a pond. Ethan Vance disappeared entirely. Rumor had it his wife kicked him out, and he was staying in a motel while looking for work in another state. Isabella moved back in with her father, who was so embarrassed by the scandal that he barely left his house. But my friends were a different story. It started with Paul and Rebecca Peterson. Yes, the same Rebecca that Ethan had apparently seduced and discarded 2 years earlier. They've been part of our regular social circle, weekend barbecues and game nights, the kind of friends you expect to have forever. Paul Johnson called me on Thursday evening. We need to talk, he said, his voice cold. About what? About what you did to Ethan and to Isabella. What I did. Don't play dumb, Davis. You destroyed 2 people's lives over a stupid photo. I was quiet for a moment, processing this. Paul, you do realize Ethan was having an affair with my fiancée, right? And that he did the same thing to your wife 2 years ago. That's different. Rebecca and I worked through our problems. We're stronger now. So I should have just let it slide? Married Isabella anyway and pretended nothing happened. You should have handled it privately, like an adult. Instead, you turned it into a public circus. The conversation went downhill from there. Paul accused me of being vindictive and cruel. I accused him of having a selective memory about his own wife's affair. We both said things we couldn't take back. He wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, I heard from Chris and Lauren Carter, Daniel and Sandra Garcia, and several other couples from our social circle. The message was consistent. I'd gone too far. I was the villain in this story. It became clear they'd been talking among themselves, building a narrative where I was the bad guy and Isabella and Ethan were the victims of my vindictive revenge plot. The breaking point came on Saturday night at the Tap House. I was having a quiet drink with Leo when Paul walked in with Chris Carter and Daniel Garcia. They spotted me immediately and made a beeline for my table. Well, look who's here, Paul said loudly enough for half the bar to hear. The town's newest celebrity. Paul, don't do this here. Why not? You didn't mind making your business public before. Chris stepped closer. You know what you are, Davis? You're a bitter, small man who couldn't handle the fact that his woman found someone better. The bar went quiet. Everyone was watching now, phones probably already recording. Someone better? I stood up slowly. You mean a married man who was using her while lying about leaving his wife? At least Ethan treated her like a queen, Daniel added. When's the last time you took Isabella somewhere nice? When's the last time you bought her flowers or jewelry or made her feel special? I was saving for our wedding. You know, the one she was planning to skip out on. Because you're boring, Paul shouted. You're a small-town contractor with no ambition, no class, no future. Isabella deserves better than fixing toilets for the rest of her life. The words hit like physical blows. These were supposed to be my friends, people who'd known me for years, who'd eaten at my table and celebrated holidays with me. You want to know what's really pathetic? Chris continued. You're so insecure that you had to destroy everyone else's happiness because you couldn't keep your own woman satisfied. That's enough, Leo said, stepping between us. Stay out of this, Leo, Paul snapped. This is between us and your loser friend here. Something snapped inside me then. The weeks of humiliation, betrayal, and now this, my own friends turning on me to defend the people who'd wronged me. You want to know what's pathetic? I said, my voice deadly calm. What's pathetic is 3 grown men ganging up on someone because they're too spineless to admit their own wives probably cheated too. What did you say? Daniel stepped forward. You heard me. Rebecca definitely did with Ethan. And I'm betting if I looked hard enough, I'd find out about the others too. Paul swung at me then, a clumsy haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked and came up with an uppercut that caught him in the solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping. Chris grabbed a beer bottle and came at me, but Leo tackled him before he could swing it. Daniel tried to circle around behind me, but I spun and caught him with an elbow to the ribs that sent him stumbling backward into a table. The fight was over in 30 seconds, but the damage was done. Not just the physical damage, though Paul would be sore for a week and Daniel would have a nice bruise on his ribs. The social damage, the final burning of bridges that could never be rebuilt. Get out, Leo told them as they picked themselves up off the floor. All of you, and don't come back. As they limped toward the door, Paul turned back to me. This isn't over, Davis. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. They already know, I replied. I'm the kind who fights back. After they left, the bar slowly returned to normal, but I could feel the stares and whispers. Some people were clearly on my side, but others looked at me like I was a ticking time bomb. You okay? Leo asked. Never better. But that was a lie. The fight had felt good in the moment, but now I was facing the reality of my situation. I'd lost my fiancée, my friends, and probably my reputation in this small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. The smart thing would be to lay low, let the gossip die down, maybe even consider moving somewhere new. But I'd never been accused of being smart. Monday morning brought the consequences of Saturday night's bar fight. My phone was buzzing with notifications. Someone had recorded the whole thing and posted it online. The video was grainy and the audio was poor, but you could clearly see me fighting 3 men and winning. The comments were split between people calling me a hero and others calling me a violent thug. The local Facebook groups were having heated debates about whether I was justified or just another example of toxic masculinity run amok. But the real surprise came when Marcus called. You've been busy, he said. News travels fast. Faster than you think. I've got some interesting information about your former friends. Such as the fact that they've been planning this for weeks. Ever since the Ethan situation went public, they've been meeting at Paul's house, coordinating their response. Coordinating how? Phone records, social media posts, even some emails. They've been working to turn your entire social circle against you. The goal was to isolate you completely, make you the pariah, while they position themselves as the reasonable adults. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why would they do that? Because you made them look bad. When you exposed Ethan and Isabella, you also exposed the fact that all of them knew what was going on and said nothing. They're covering their own backs by making you the villain. What else? Paul's been in contact with Isabella. They're planning something for this weekend, some kind of public confrontation designed to make you look unstable. The Harvest Festival downtown. Lots of people, lots of cameras. The perfect place to provoke you into doing something stupid. The Harvest Festival was Bellevue's biggest annual event. The entire town would be there, along with visitors from surrounding areas. If Paul and his crew were planning to ambush me there, it would be in front of hundreds of people. There's more, Marcus continued. I did some digging into your friends' finances and personal lives, like you suggested. Want to know what I found? Tell me. Chris Carter has been having an affair with his secretary for 8 months. Daniel Garcia's been embezzling from his construction company to pay gambling debts. And Paul Johnson, he's been buying drugs from a dealer in Portland. Not just marijuana. We're talking serious stuff. Drugs, pills, and powder. The kind that gets you serious jail time. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. My former friends weren't just hypocrites. They were criminals. Can you prove all this? Photos, financial records, text messages. These guys aren't as careful as they think they are. Send me everything. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they're planning to give me. A public humiliation they'll never recover from. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly. Typical October weather in Washington. The Harvest Festival was set up in the town square with food trucks, craft booths, and a small stage for local bands. Despite the weather, hundreds of people had turned out for the annual tradition. I arrived around noon, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, looking like any other local resident enjoying the festival. But I wasn't there for the food or entertainment. I was there for war. I spotted Paul first, standing near the apple cider stand with Chris and Daniel. They were scanning the crowd, clearly looking for me. Nearby, I could see Isabella talking with some of her coworkers, occasionally glancing in Paul's direction. They were all here. Perfect. I walked over to the small stage, where a local country band was finishing their set. The festival organizer, Martha Walsh, was standing nearby with a clipboard. Martha, can I borrow the microphone for a minute? I asked. Sure, honey. You want to make an announcement? Something like that. I climbed onto the stage as the band was packing up their equipment. The microphone was still hot, and when I tapped it, the sound echoed across the square. Can I have everyone's attention, please? The crowd slowly turned toward the stage. I could see Paul and his friends pushing through the people, realizing what was happening, but unable to stop it. For those who don't know me, I'm Davis Miller. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've always believed in treating people with honesty and respect. The square was quiet now, except for the sound of rain pattering on the tent roofs. Recently, some people have been spreading stories about me, calling me unstable, violent, a bad friend. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to set the record straight. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. This is a recording of Paul Johnson arranging a drug deal in Portland last month. The audio was crystal clear, Paul's voice discussing prices and quantities, arranging a regular supply. The crowd murmured as they recognized his voice. Paul's face went white. He started pushing toward the stage, but there were too many people in the way. This next recording is Chris Carter on the phone with his secretary, discussing their affair and how to hide it from his wife. Chris's voice filled the square, talking about hotel rooms and lies, laughing about how clueless his wife was. We could see Lauren Carter in the crowd, her face a mask of shock and rage. And finally, we have Daniel Garcia, discussing how he's been stealing money from his construction company to pay off gambling debts. Daniel's voice was the final nail in the coffin, casually discussing his embezzlement like it was a minor accounting error. The crowd was buzzing now, people pulling out phones to record, others calling friends to tell them what was happening. These are the men who call me unstable, I said into the microphone. These are the people who said I went too far when I exposed my fiancé's affair. I'll let you decide who the real villains are in this story. I unplugged my phone and stepped down from the stage. Paul, Chris, and Daniel had finally made it through the crowd, their faces twisted with rage and panic. You son of a... Paul screamed, launching himself at me. But I was ready for him. I sidestepped his charge and let his momentum carry him into the stage platform. He hit it hard and went down in a tangle of limbs. Chris came next, swinging wildly. I caught his wrist, and twisted, using his own force to flip him over my hip. He landed hard on the wet grass and didn't get up. Daniel was smarter. He pulled out a knife. The crowd screamed and scattered as Daniel advanced on me, the blade gleaming in the gray afternoon light. But 20 years of military and civilian training had taught me how to handle armed opponents. I grabbed a folding chair from nearby and used it to block his first thrust. The knife stuck in a metal frame, and while he was trying to pull it free, I swung the chair around and caught him in the side of the head. He dropped like a stone. The whole fight had lasted maybe 90 seconds, but it felt like hours. I stood in the middle of the town square, surrounded by my defeated enemies, while hundreds of people stared at me in shock. Then the applause started. It began with one person, then spread through the crowd like wildfire. People were cheering, whistling, taking pictures and videos. Someone shouted, "That's how you handle bullies!" And the crowd roared its approval. I looked around and saw Isabella standing near the cider stand, her face pale with shock. Our eyes met across the square, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. She was finally beginning to understand what she'd unleashed when she decided to betray me. But I wasn't done yet. I walked over to where she was standing, the crowd parting before me like Moses crossing the Red Sea. "Hello, Isabella. Davis, please. I have something for you." I pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. She opened it with shaking hands and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. "Those are pictures of Ethan with his wife and kids at Disney World last weekend," I said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, along with the lease agreement for their new house in Florida. Turns out he didn't lose his job after all. He got transferred, and he took his family with him. Isabella stared at the photos, her face crumbling as she realized the truth. Ethan hadn't been ruined by our scandal. He'd used it as an excuse to disappear and start fresh somewhere else, just like he'd probably done before. "He never loved you," I said quietly. "You were just another game to him." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "How did you?" "I hired a private investigator. Turns out Ethan's done the same routine in 3 different cities. He always targets ambitious women, always promises to leave his wife, always disappears when things get complicated." The crowd was listening to every word, phones recording everything. Isabella's humiliation was now complete and public, just like mine had been. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" "Because you did it to me first. The only difference is everything I'm saying is true." I turned to address the crowd one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to remember this day. Remember what happens when you try to destroy an innocent man to cover up your own crimes. Remember what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." I walked through the crowd toward my truck, people stepping aside to let me pass. Behind me, I could hear sirens approaching. Someone had finally called the police about the fight, but I wasn't worried. I had video evidence of Daniel pulling the knife, witnesses who'd seen Paul and Chris attack me first, and a crowd full of people who just watched me expose 3 criminals and a cheating ex-fiancé. As I drove away from the festival, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. For the first time in months, I was smiling. The quiet contractor was gone. In his place was something harder, something that couldn't be broken or betrayed or humiliated, something that fought back and won.